The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to check out our affiliate sponsor, One of One Productions, the New Jersey-based podcast studio that produces and edits both audio and video podcasts. They sell equipment for the avid podcaster and have even created a guesting kit exclusively for our listeners. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited. We got another live show today from Nashville. Pamela's down in Nashville, originally from New Jersey, near me, but we're going to have a really good discussion about marketing and AI and all the things that you can do as a business owner. Just to mention, we do have a new affiliate sponsor coming on, the Summit Host, which is a website, and a woman who's going to be on the show soon, what does she do? She creates virtual summits for people. So you could run your business and learn how to do that. And she's got a free book and all kinds of great stuff. So be listening for that. If you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and like us so we can continue to bring the kind of content, great content that we have. So let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, Pamela. So welcome to the show. Podmatch, right? Is that how we connected? Was through Podmatch? That's a great website.
Yes, it is. It's super effective, and I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, no, I get a lot of guests through Podmatch. I don't know if they're doing something right. So I mentioned that you're in Nashville, which is great. And one of my places, my wife and I are like, we got to go to Nashville. I don't know, everybody thinks they ought to go there. So that's not really a topic of conversation, but it's always good to have. And that's one of the advantages of these video chats, is to connect with people all over the country, all over the world, and things like that. So maybe, because I know we're going to have a really good conversation about digital marketing, what's accessible to the small business owner, AI, and how you see it being used and things like that. But maybe we can spend a little time talking about your background and your history and, things like that, and how you got into what you're doing now.
I started out as a graphic designer. So I was doing marketing, but I was kind of on the visual side of marketing. And I got to tell you, Mitch, I am totally dating myself, but I started out with a T-square and an X-Acto knife. This is how I was doing my design work. It was all manual when I first started out.
Not publishing in those days, right?
It didn't even exist. When I first started, the first few years, it didn't exist. So very shortly after I started, the Mac computer with design programs was kind of introduced. The Mac computer came out, and then they started to put design programs on it that could actually do some of the work that we were doing. So that was the first change. it really flipped my career on its head. It went from being this very manual process to something you did at a keyboard and on a screen, which was a huge change, and
Right.
a change that really empowered others who didn't have design training or marketing training to be able
Yeah.
to do some of that themselves.
Made it very accessible. Right. Sure.
Yeah. And then the next change really happened when the internet came online, right? Because when I started out, it was fax machines and telephone calls and in person meetings. But then once the internet was a way that we could run our businesses, that again was a huge change because it opened up my horizons and allowed me to work with people wherever they were, which is amazing.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and now really in the past year, the introduction of AI tools and the impact of those tools on how we can market our businesses, I think that's the third change. So it's a lot of spins around the clock and a lot of changes, but it's been so exciting. And I may have mentioned when you and I met that I have a very low tolerance for boredom. And so
Oh,
I've been doing
great.
marketing my entire career and I have never been bored. It's always
Right.
changing.
So I guess when you started in graphic design, you were like more of an artist,
I was
right? Doing
more,
like
yes.
stuff like that, right?
More of an
Targeting your
artist, and the interesting thing is, the books that I wrote these books about content marketing, and the angle of these books is how people can use content marketing if they don't think of themselves as writers. So that was my story. I came into using written content online without really having, I didn't have an English major. I had never worked as a writer. I'd never been paid as a writer, but somehow I wanted to be able to write and put it online. And I discovered this structure for writing content that really works. And when you
right.
understand the structure and use it, you can create content that's super effective. So that's the whole premise of my books is I'm not a writer, but here's how you can become a writer and post things online that actually generate revenue for your business.
Right. Well, writing for the internet, right? Writing content that gets seen and heard is different than being a writer. I mean, I know people that are copywriters and they know the algorithm or how to do things to get noticed. But if you're just an English major and you're a good creative writer and you can write good stories, it does not mean that somebody's going to see your blog post, right?
That's very true. That's a really good point. It's a different structure, and there's one of the things you have to be concerned about with online writing is hooking people from the very beginning, hooking them from the headline to the first sentence of your content, and then just keeping that engagement all the way down the page. And I think you're right. Creative writers don't have that pressure on them to keep people hooked and glued to the page. We have to
Right.
be very aware that we're competing in this super distracting environment and with people who literally have one hand on the mouse and they're ready
Yeah.
to click away to something else, right?
Right.
So
Just
we're kind of marketing to squirrels, right? Squirrel, squirrel.
yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to be aware of that in our writing and just keep people engaged throughout.
Yeah, and that's why TikTok and all these things work, right? Because they're very short and you can flip through everything and you can see things and then something catches your eye and then you watch it a little bit and then you flip it again. And I mean, it's just nuts the
I
amount of
I
content.
I love that example. That's a great example because when you think about it also, any kind of short format video is engaging so many of our senses.
Right.
It's audio, it's video, so it's visual and auditory, and then oftentimes they do overlay text. So you're
Yeah.
engaging on all these different levels. You're watching it, you're hearing it, you're reading it. It's super engaging in a way that not a lot of other online content can do.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like subliminally satisfying, because you're like right to
Totally.
the point. You're hearing what it is, you're not no build up and stuff like that. So yeah, so we'll talk more about that. So you start, I believe though, you said you started kind of as a fractional, like you had your own business and you had clients and you were working for them for a while, right? For 20,
Yeah,
30.
so I'll give you it's not super interesting to talk about my career honestly, but I'll give you the quick synopsis so people understand my background. I did start out as a graphic designer. I didn't do any kind of writing. I did the visual part of marketing, helped to market businesses. But if they needed any kind of writing, I would bring in a writer and to do that
Okay.
work, like a copywriter. But
Absolutely.
then in 2010, I started an online business. So I was serving online business owners who wanted to build an online presence. And that was when I started understanding content marketing and started learning how to do it myself. That was when I wrote my books that were
So that was early days of social media, right?
It
Facebook's
was,
only a couple years old at that point,
yes,
right?
2010 was early, pretty early days of blogging and early days with social media, and short video formats didn't even exist back then.
Right,
So I wrote the books in that environment, and then starting toward the end of 2022, I had
right.
started consulting on the side, and I began really pivoting and focusing more on consulting, marketing consulting. And I started in a fractional CMO position with dental claim support at the beginning of 2023. So, fractional chief marketing officer. But I discovered in about 2 weeks that it really was not a fractional role. It was actually a full time
No,
role. So,
super a lot of-
yeah, there's a lot to do and a department to run. So, I worked in that role as a fractional CMO until June when my agreement ran out. And then I came on board as an employee. So, I've now gone from being a 30 plus year entrepreneur to being an employee, which is the most shocking thing of that has happened this year outside
you
of like
basically
Chat
build
GPT.
and you build and run and change and their marketing strategy, all their stuff,
Exactly.
content, everything.
Yes.
So you have a department of people, or you got to do this yourself? How big's
No,
the
I
organization?
definitely have a department of people and contractors. So it's
Got it.
funny, Mitch, because even though I'm not heading up my own business in the same way, I very much feel like I'm heading up the department, and it feels very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
You're doing the same kinds of marketing experiments, you're tracking your results, you're managing people, leading a team. So
Right.
it doesn't feel that different than what I was doing when I was doing all of that in my own business.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what larger companies are trying to do, right? They want to create these departments where people feel more entrepreneurial and they're more creative and they have more, ownership to what they're doing. And because I can imagine, and I'm curious, so do you have a lot of younger people that work for you? And I wonder, do they get it? Or, I mean, do they come out of school and they're working and they're like, oh, they totally get this because it's the world in which they've been living for most of
Yeah.
their life, or not really?
It's so interesting. So I have a couple of younger people on the team, and then I have other people who are closer to my age and some people who are in between. So it's a little mix of everything. And what I find with the younger people is, yes, they get some things that are just native to them, which is
Right.
great. But there are also sort of foundational concepts from the marketing world that have been evergreen throughout my career, no matter what media was being used
Right.
to use that approach. They're
It's the
kind of
same strategy.
foundational, right? Exactly. Some of those things they have not learned because they're just young. They're starting out in their careers. So there's been a really beautiful interchange of ideas between what feels native to them and what I know actually works. And we kind of mix those things together and make it work. So it's been a really fascinating experience. And one of the reasons I was like, all right, I'm going to do this full time. I'm not going to take on other clients. I want to devote myself to this customer and this business because they're growing quickly. They're very ambitious. They are leading their industry and they want to really skyrocket up. So I'm excited to help them get there.
So the company you're with, you said it's a dental company.
It's dental claim support, and what they
Ah,
do, it's really interesting stuff. They provide what's called revenue cycle management for dental offices and dental groups, right?
right.
And that is basically the entire financial transaction from the moment that you present your insurance card at your dental office front desk to the moment that the insurance company gets billed and the patient gets billed for any balance. They just take care of all of that and take it off the plate of the dentist.
Right. But you're basically the biller, claims management, the
Everything,
whole financial side
appealing
of it.
denied claims,
Right. Okay.
verifying
So like
insurance,
image verified.
credentialing new doctors. So
Oh, you
basically,
do that too? Okay.
one of the pain points in that industry is that dentists do not go to they don't go to business school. They go to dental school, but they don't have an MBA. They don't
They're
have been
doctors. That's why,
they're
right.
they're doctors and they're great doctors, and they have um in Nashville, people say they have a heart for service, but they truly do. They have a heart to serve their patients. That's the whole reason they got into dentistry.
Right.
And what happens is they get out of school, they open a practice, and they discover immediately that what they're actually running is a business.
Yeah, of course.
And in like a difficult business because they're not paid for their work upfront. They have to bill
Right.
it to an insurance company and hope that insurance company pays. They have to hope that they submit all the codes exactly right, and the insurance companies purposely make it tricky to get right.
Does the dental industry work on CPT codes like the medical industry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And they have their own set of codes that are, of course, constantly changing, right? So, one of the things that we do, probably the most important thing that we do, is we're just experts at it. That's all we do. We do it all day long. And so, dentists
100%.
can basically say, just like, take care of this. We just take care of the whole thing. And we get amazing ROI for our patients. So it's like super satisfying to market the service because we're genuinely helping dentists who are then genuinely helping the people they serve.
So, but your company is really B2B. I mean, the
It is
dental off practices, the dentists are your clients,
we
customers.
exactly. It's definitely B2B. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not helping patients with any
No,
issues.
we're helping dentists, dental practice owners, and dental, in some cases, dental groups.
That's
We
right,
see
because
that a
they work
lot of consolidation
yeah,
in the industry where, 5 practices join together and form a group. So
yeah.
we can go in and help the whole group with all of the aspects of the financial running of that group.
Yeah, I worked with a group in California. They were doing roll-ups and they were buying, you
Mhm.
know, a dental practice with 2 offices, 3 offices, and they were rolling them
That's a
up. And,
huge trend in the
you
industry
know,
right now.
of course, they're doing it in the veterinary industry too because they went
Mhm.
through it in the medical business, and now they're like, oh, well, if we get some, economies of scale here, we can make some money and run these
Exactly.
practices better than, like you said, better than the medical professionals who don't have business training. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
just frees them up to focus on what they really got into it to do, right? Which was to practice their skills and serve patients. And they
yeah.
don't have to deal with all that stuff that makes their lives miserable and keeps them up at night.
Right. Well, that's what it is, right? They're like, I thought I just get to work with patients. Why do I have to do all this stuff? But
Right.
I guess the choice is you go to work for somebody, right? If you don't.
Right.
So you guys work all over the country. You work with
We
dentists
work
throughout the country.
all over the country. Yes. And we have remote team members all over the country. So what we do is we assign a team member to an office. So they have
Right.
this remote person who's just taking care of all their billing. They get to know them on a first name basis. They can call them anytime with questions. And
Oh,
that
like the
person
CFO.
becomes like an expert on their practice. They're they are their person, right? So they're kind of on call to help them. It's a
Now,
pretty cool model.
I know you didn't move to Nashville for this job because that was a while ago. So is the headquarters in Nashville
No,
or
they're
no?
actually based in Savannah, but
Okay. So
dispersed all
you're
over the
remote too.
US.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're remote.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So, why don't we talk a little? Well, first, let's talk about the kind of things you do for your company, the strategies you use, the things you're doing. Because I know you wanted to get into AI, and we'll talk more about it in the second half. But I know you're taking certain approaches with the business itself, right? Because of what's going on. So maybe you can share some of those things.
Yeah, I would love to share that. So, I mentioned these 2 books that I wrote. They were published in 2016 and 2018, and they're all about
Okay.
content
On
marketing.
Amazon, they're available
Sorry?
on Amazon. Are they on Amazon?
They
Like if
are.
show
We're
those?
on video, so I'll grab them
Yeah.
and show them to you. So, the new versions are coming out in October. This is the first one, Master Content Marketing, and
Okay.
that's the follow-up, Master Content Strategy.
Got it.
And they'll look pretty much the same with the second versions that are coming out. But I had no intention to do a second edition of those books because the concepts were very evergreen. The way to create and assemble content and then the strategy for using content hasn't
Yeah.
really changed that much. But I'll tell you what, when AI hit like in November of last year and I started experimenting with it, I was like, I went back to my editor and said, listen, are you available to work on a second edition of my books for 2023? Because I can't in good conscience leave them out there in the world the way they are without talking about AI. It's way too important.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's
Right.
been a really interesting experiment throughout this whole year to figure out how I could recommend that people use AI and then also using it with the marketing team that I'm managing and getting us all up to speed with how to use it ethically, how to get it to produce information that is accurate,
Right. Yeah.
fast, and usable, right? And we've developed this process, and it works beautifully. It works really well. So I'd love to share more about that because it's really something that the average person can do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So, what does AI do for the average business owner? Is he using it to blog? Is he using it to post? Is he using it to? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting. We talked about not being a writer and not feeling confident with your writing skills, right? Even if you have an English major or a creative
Right.
writing major. So I think that's super common, right? That people don't feel confident writing and posting it on the internet. And it's very, anything we post is very public, right?
Sure.
Whether it's a Facebook post or a blog post, whatever it is, it's very public and it's very out there. And it can feel super intimidating if you don't do it
Yeah.
every day, right? So I think one of the best ways to use AI is to give you confidence in your writing skills. Now, when we say artificial intelligence, that's a very broad category these days because there's
Right.
artificial intelligence for video and for images and then
Right.
for writing and for summarizing meetings and so many different things, right? I think in 2023 I feel like every 10 minutes there's a new piece of software,
Yeah, I
right?
go on these Zoom calls now, and there's like these chat bots that show up. So I have a meeting on Wednesdays, and a lot of times one of the guys doesn't come, but I guess it's connected to his calendar, and it
Yes.
pops in and it's an attorney group, so the attorneys are all
Yeah.
nervous. I'm like, what is that going on? I don't want my thing recorded, and he's not even there, and the thing goes and
Yep.
records the meeting.
Google
So
is actually incorporating that into their meeting product where you can actually tell Google, I'm not going to be in this meeting, and it will send you a summary of what was said. That's coming. So yeah,
wow,
it's kind of mind blowing, and it's I mean, without getting into all the privacy and ethical things, because I think we're all trying to figure that out. But
did they just have a huge conference in Washington like yesterday or 2 days ago with all
yeah,
the leaders of the tech industry about AI and
yeah,
regulation and everything?
yeah, yeah, and that's going to be an ongoing thing, honestly, and I prefer to let the bureaucrats figure out however they want to manage it. But in the meantime, what I really wanted to do was to figure out a way to use the existing tools. My favorite tool is one of the simplest, so I can share that with you. But to just use the existing tools and then like our human knowledge and put the two together in a way that you can create something that's usable.
Yeah, I
What
don't
I
think it can write articles for you. I think it can get you started and will give you the
exactly.
framework, at
Yes.
least now at this
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
exactly.
but you do have to check for inaccuracies because there was a story. I don't. You probably know the story. There was two attorneys that did a
I
brief,
I heard
and
about that.
it didn't check anything, and there were cases that were wrong that
Yeah,
didn't even exist,
yeah,
and they got admonished. I think they got suspended for a while. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you definitely have to fact check, and those kinds of
yeah,
stories are good reminders. I mean, it's also a good reminder that we're all beginners with this technology, so we are gonna mess up like that, and
yeah.
I feel bad for the attorneys, but honestly, it was a service to
It's an
humanity to have
exceptional
that
work.
story come out because I think it made us all realize like, oh yeah, we can't just take it straight out of the
Right.
chatbot, right?
Yeah. Right. Just because it's computer based doesn't mean it's going to be accurate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
what's I think a part of what's difficult is that it sounds very authoritative when it answers. You
oh,
ask
very
it a
much.
question, it
Yeah.
sounds like an expert. It can make itself
Yeah.
sound like an expert. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little
Yeah. It's very.
daunting.
Yeah. So you think it's right. You're like, because I've actually used ChatGPT to write like an operating agreement or a business contract or something like that. Some of them look like my work. Like I'm like, really well written stuff. Now, of course, clients that are looking at it have no idea what they're looking at, why clauses are included and what it should say and doesn't apply in your state and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, if I was a business owner, I need an operating agreement. I go there and I say I need an operating agreement for my partner. Boom, it would type it out for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a little frightening. So
Yeah.
what the easiest, your favorite tool that you were going to
Well,
mention?
it's ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Mitch, I went to all these different content creation tools, just kind of researching because I wanted to find the best tool for my team.
Yeah.
And I plugged in the corporate credit card for a bunch of different tools and signed up for paid trials and all of this. And I did not find a tool that worked as well as ChatGPT when it's used in conjunction with somebody who knows what they're doing. Right. So that's the
Right.
caveat. It's
Okay.
not just ChatGPT by itself. It's feeding it information in a specific way and then having a process for what you're going to do with the output. That's really
Right.
the trick.
But ChatGPT is just words, right? I mean, it doesn't deal with
It's
information.
just words right now. It
Right.
does have some
That
plugins
makes
that are
sense.
starting to allow you to do other things, but it for now it's just words.
Yeah. I think that the all this AI stuff is going to do to the content creator what happened with desktop publishing. Like I had friends in high school and middle school whose fathers and mothers were in publishing
Mm,
and were driven out of printing and were
mhm.
driven out of business because
Yeah,
they didn't need to do it anymore,
yeah,
for a lot of small business. And now there's so many small business owners, they almost, print their own stuff unless they really need it professionally printed. So I
yeah.
I see, I don't know what your thought is about it, but that's what I see happening with AI. It's kind of, lowering the bar, making it easier for people to do these kind of things where they don't have to get a copywriter in a lot of cases. And and you don't need the most advanced person to do things. So it kind
Right,
of brings that down too. I
right.
don't know if you talked about it because you
Yeah,
saw it happening in the desktop publishing.
yes, that's a perfect analogy. And as a matter of fact, I had an uncle who worked in your area of New Jersey for a print shop.
Uh-huh.
It was a pre-press shop. So their biggest client was CBS Records. So CBS Records would send an album cover. They would send the album cover art to this pre-press shop, and the pre-press shop would do all of the films and everything, the plates, and do everything that had to be prepared before the album went on press. Well, digital came along and none of that pre-press stuff was needed because you could go straight from the computer to the press basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I watched my
That's an ironic
uncles.
example, right? Because vinyl has now come back.
I
When I had my
know.
son in high
Isn't that
school, he said,
funny?
"Dad, did you hear about this? They have these things called vinyl." I was like, "Well, you mean like record albums? Yeah, you're a little bit behind." And now it's like, I think there are companies that went out of business that would have thrived now, but they've already
Yes,
gone out of business.
I know.
But
Well, and that
but
makes it more scarce and more valuable and all of that. But
right,
um, yeah,
exactly.
so those are all the changes I've seen in my career that new technologies come along. And yes, some people lose the ability to do what they were doing. But if they're smart, they figure out a way to adapt to whatever the change is and move into that, right?
Right.
I definitely saw it with desktop publishing, and all of these big technology changes have brought that. So, what I noticed with AI, do you want me to get into how we're using it now, or do you want to
Yeah,
do it
no,
later?
we could do it now and then we'll take a break and then we can talk about things, like digital marketing 101 and what people need to go. So why don't you do that and then we'll take a break out.
Okay, awesome. So, what I'm noticing is there are a couple of things that are key to getting the best results out of something like ChatGPT. So, a chat based AI tool.
Right.
One of the things to remember is you need to feed in what you want it to be. You want to give it a
Right.
role within the first sentence. And in the case of content marketing, you probably want to tell it you are an expert content marketer or you are an expert copywriter. Either of those will get you pretty good writing results. If you don't
Interesting.
say that, guess what? It writes like a robot because it's a robot. So if you don't tell it to be something else, it will just be what it is, which is a robot. So the writing will come out very robotic. It will be basically unusable. So you have to start with telling it how you want it to behave.
So you think that if I told it and said, I'm a 14th century Renaissance poet, write me a love poem sonnet, it would write in that?
I dare
Okay,
you to try it.
try it.
It is amazing. I mean, one of the first times I used ChatGPT, I said, "You are Dr. Seuss, and I want you to write." My sister was visiting, and I said, "I want you
Yeah.
to write a poem about how." I've had a great visit with my sister and now she's leaving. And it wrote me this poem in the style of
Just
Dr.
like the
Seuss.
style.
And I
Yes,
read it out to her and she was
and it's very, Dr. Seuss is very specific, noticeable the way he writes.
style. Yes.
Yeah, style, right? That's the thing. So it seemed like a Dr. Seuss book.
It was a poem written like Dr. Seuss had come to life and written the poem. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect. It wasn't, not everything was great about it, but it was it was astonishing. It was astonishing.
Right.
So
That's what you could have done, right?
yeah. So start with a role for sure. Start with a role because if you don't want it to sound like a robot, tell it what you want it to sound like. Give it as
Okay.
much detail as you can about the goal for what you want it to write, how you're planning to use it, and the audience who you want to appeal to. Feed those things in. And then ask it the magic question. And this is the magic question that makes such a difference in the results you get. You
Right.
need to, before you finish hitting return on the prompt, you need to say, please ask me any clarifying questions you need answers to so that you can do this task. And when you do that, it will come back with a list of questions. Sometimes there are 3, sometimes there are 5, sometimes there are 7, but they'll be numbered.
Yeah.
Question number 1, and it asks you like really good questions, right? Good questions that a copywriter would probably be asking you.
So then you're going to answer those questions?
Yes. So you're going to answer those questions. And the great thing is, now it slows you down, but I'm telling you, the results are remarkable when you do this. What you can do is just write your answers after numbers. So you don't have to repeat the question and rewrite it. You just say number 1,
right,
and then the answer, number 2, and the answer. So it takes only a few minutes to fill this in, but you answer all the questions and then it'll come back and say, thank you for those answers. That's very helpful. And then it spits out this content that's not terrible, right?
Yeah.
Now, I tell people it is a draft 0.
Right.
It's not even a first draft because a first draft is written by a human, in my opinion. It's a draft 0. It's something that a human can take and improve on.
Right. I like that, draft 0. Yeah, it's true. But that's people. But the problem is that people rely on technology and then they think, oh, that's great. And they take it and they use it. And they don't realize that it's not even a starting point.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. It's a decent starting point. The other thing I do is I call it like an over caffeinated intern. So imagine you have an intern working in your office. They've had way too many espressos and they're trying to do the work. They do it super fast. It's not always accurate. It's not always good, right? But it's fast. It's for sure fast. So, it gives you something to work with. I do not recommend ever that you take something straight from the tool and copy paste it and use it.
Right. No.
Firstly, because it probably needs massaging in some way, and you need to slow down and really look at it and see where it needs help, right?
Right.
You need to make sure it's accurate. You need to make sure it's not hallucinating and inventing stuff that's just not true, right?
For listeners, it invents things.
It totally does. And it's like we said earlier, it sounds very authoritative. It sounds like it knows what it's talking about. So you need to slow down and take that step. But the other reason you need to do that is that right now, as we speak, tools are being developed that will detect AI generated content. I mean, there are some out there now that are pretty good at it, right? So you have to take whatever it gives you and imbue it with human emotion, actual facts, subject matter expertise that only you have, stories that you know that the AI tool doesn't know because they are your own human stories. All of those things add humanity to the output that if you start with what it gives you and then add that layer of humanity and that polish that only a person can give it, you end up with something that is really good and at a speed that you would not be able to do it
of course,
if you were doing it all from scratch.
Now, was it trial and error that you learned these techniques that work in terms of, asking it questions and putting it in a certain light in terms of being an expert and things like that? You just
So it's a combination. I've definitely been paying attention to everyone who's been experimenting out there with me and looking to see what people are doing and what's working, and then trying it myself. In the early days of ChatGPT, I saw a lot of people sharing these super long, involved prompts. And I have nothing against those. That's great. But it's a lot to remember, right? And I'm all about just keeping things simple. So I was trying to figure out a way that worked that would also be easy to remember. So that combination of role, goal, and then tell me what else you need to know is it's easy enough to remember, and it worked consistently well for me.
Good. Well, we got to put that in the show notes. Role, goal, and ask me what you need to know.
Exactly.
All right. Why don't we take a commercial break, and then we'll come back. We'll start talking about more. We'll come off the AI train a little bit, and we'll talk more about digital marketing for the small business owner, what's accessible, what they can be doing these days for little or no money type of
Love
thing.
it. That'll be fun.
All right. Okay. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Maybe you're looking to get into podcasting, or you just want to market your business. Maybe you want to do it for enjoyment, or because you have a message you want to get out there. One of One Productions is a New Jersey-based studio just over the George Washington Bridge that caters to the booming business of podcasting. They offer a comfortable atmosphere using the latest technology available to record your podcast. And they are a full-service media company offering both audio and video production services, creating both audio and video podcasts, as well as video shorts for business and personal use. Professional audio equipment packages are available through their website for all budgets, and be sure to check out their podcast guesting kit, created especially for our listeners. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. Okay, so we are back. I wrote that down. Role, goal, and questions about additional information.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to play with that. And I'm definitely going to do the thing about being a 14th century Renaissance bard.
I want you to share those results. I can't wait to see it.
I definitely will. Okay, so we could go on for a long time about AI, but let's talk about, digital marketing and, maybe some of the strategies you use in your business, but also some of the things from your book that the small business owner can use, because I have a lot of marketing people on the show, and I do it for a reason. They're not all entrepreneurs. A lot of them are, and you have been. It's more, though, about, the entrepreneur out there, and a lot of these people are like, they kind of dabble in digital marketing, which includes social media and blogging and all that, email marketing, all that stuff, but they don't really do it from a strategic, ongoing, regular basis. And that's how you get results, right? Consistency and keeping things out there. So maybe I'll leave you to tell us more.
Yeah, that's, one of the things that's been really interesting in these last, let's say 15 years is, I think, calling it digital marketing is great. I think we are very close to just calling it marketing, though. It's just,
maybe you're right.
It's just how marketing is done, right? Marketing earlier in my career, a lot of it happened on paper and on television screens or over the radio. And now so much of it happens in a digital environment, because that's where all of us are spending our time, the majority of our time. So I really think we're very close to just being able to call it marketing, but I totally understand what you mean when you say digital marketing.
Yeah, but I think even you're right. Even if it's something printed, usually there's a QR code or something to draw you
Drive
online.
you there. Yes.
You
And
can show 'em. Right, exactly.
that's probably the place to start. So, well, the very first place to start really in all marketing, and this has not changed in my career, is that you really have to start by understanding who your customer is and cue the eye roll, because this is where people start to roll their eyes like, oh, yeah, don't tell me about my customer avatar or my ideal customer.
Real profile. Right, exactly.
But I'll
No,
tell,
but I look, I hold the torch too.
yeah,
People think they know what their customer is, and they don't. They're wrong, or it can be what they want it to be, and they don't. They do. They roll their eyes. So
you know what? I'm going to send you a link. I actually have one of the most popular downloads on my website is I created this ideal customer profile worksheet that you can work through, and lots of people download that. So I can put that out there in case people are interested. But it
yeah,
it
if we could put a link in the show notes after the
yeah,
show, people can get it.
it's
That would be
it's
good.
so important, because honestly, if you're not really creating all this marketing to go after the right customer, it's kind of like setting off for a destination, but like not really knowing where it is or something, and just starting to
Yeah,
drive. You just start to drive and you hope you get there. But
yeah.
if you really want to
I don't
get there
know.
and reach those people, you have to know who they are.
Right. Okay.
And then the other thing I would say is, like you said about the QR codes that are driving back to a website, it's really important to think about your website as being the home base for your business online. So a
Yeah.
digital presence on social is great. Your thriving TikTok channel is awesome. It's great to do all those things on all the social platforms, but it's super important to have a rock solid home base on the internet, which is your website,
Right.
because that's the only platform you actually control. I don't think you own TikTok. I know I don't. uh, and neither of us owns Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those platforms. We can put content on them. We can rent space on them by adding our content to them. But at any moment, our accounts can get pulled. I mean, we all know people whose
Sure.
accounts have gotten pulled, and maybe they built up a huge following on those platforms.
Right. Or even they even control who sees what you're posting and
Exactly,
what's
the
relevant. They
algorithms.
put
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
So it's really important to have some kind of a home base that you continue to put out there. You just let people know, this is my website, this is my website. You can find me at this URL, and you just keep putting that out there, so that if for some reason your account gets pulled or you lose that audience, they know where to find you online. And then when it comes to
Right.
your website, you just have to have those basic pages. It doesn't have to be super daunting. You need to have a home page. You probably need to have some kind of about page that helps people understand who is behind the business. People are
Right.
curious. They always want to know that. And about pages tend to
Yeah.
be some of the most visited pages online on a website. So you probably want to have some kind of about page. And then you want to have some kind of contact page. If someone wants to work with you, if they want to know more about what you do, you got to give them a way to reach out to you.
Right. Those are the three basics.
Those are the three basics. And then I would say once you have those nailed down, it's really great to have some kind of content page. So either a blog that you contribute to, a series of podcast episodes that you post on there, a video series that you post on there, or a combination of all of those. You can definitely do that too. Some kind of
Right.
content page allows people to learn a little bit more about your business, what's important to you, how you help your customers, the kinds of challenges that you solve, and things like that. And then the
Yeah.
last one is probably a commerce. I call it a commerce page, but
Okay.
it's either a services page that talks about your business to business services, or it's a store page where people can buy products, some kind of commerce. So home, about, contact, then
Right.
content and commerce, some kind of commerce page.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, it may differ if you're B2B versus B2C, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. And I always find that sharing information is always a good thing. Like, I've had this argument with other legal professionals. They're like, well, why would I put that up there? And they don't need us. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Like, people aren't going to stop using your legal services if it's
Right.
something you're posting online. They're
Yeah.
going to appreciate that you're sharing information,
Right.
educating them a little bit. And then when they need real help,
Right.
they go, well, Mitch was the guy who was teaching us all this stuff. Let's go back to him. He's obviously the expert. Gives you that.
Exactly. And it's not just that, Mitch. It's also because I think, in the legal field, especially, when we engage a lawyer, when any of us engage a lawyer, that's going to be an ongoing relationship. It's not usually a one-off thing that's done in 2 weeks, right? Normally it's an ongoing thing. If they're helping with an ongoing situation or you have them on retainer for your business, you're going to be in a lot of contact with that person. You're going to be interacting a lot. And having content on a website helps you to feel like you know that person just a little bit. And you could, it's like, okay, I'm going to engage that person because I like their writing voice. I like their point of view. I like how they see the world. And that's somebody I want to work with long term. So it's a way to sort of low key advertise your business without actually advertising your business.
Yeah. I find that on websites where people don't, like in the About Us section, they don't really, and they don't have to tell their personal story, but they don't have, photos of their team. They don't, it just doesn't give that kind of like, oh, now I see who I'm working with type of thing. This is what their background is or where they're from, or, if it's just about the company and not about the people behind the company, we know companies don't operate themselves. So, well, although some companies would like to think that, but it's not true. So, right. There's people, you take the people away and there's no companies. So I always find that that's like a missing element, I think, in a lot of, we're talking small business owners, obviously, but even large companies should have their, their principal people. And what are you hiding from? That's how I feel about it.
Well, and the other thing that I always tell people is the about page actually should be, at least a part of it should be about who you serve, which is that's a real 180 right there. But you want people to get to the about page and kind of see themselves on that page. So you can say something like, this website is about the people that we serve, who are these people, and describe them. And then people realize, like, oh, I'm in the right place. This business actually serves people just like me, right? And then you start talking about the business and how you serve them, who you are, all of that. But if you lead with them, that ends up being a super powerful about page.
Sure. And then it's kind of like a weed check too, right? Because if you have your ideal client profile and you list these, the kinds of people that we work with, then they might, they say, well, maybe, I'm not right for their business. So you don't get the people calling that you're really not looking to work with.
You can avoid the tire kickers. Yes. That's a really smart way to avoid the tire kickers, and just focus on, be super clear about who your ideal customer is and be public about it. Don't just make it a wish that you keep to yourself. Be public about it and put it on your about page.
Right. Yeah. What's the point of having a profile like that if you don't actually put it out there to try and work with the people that you want to work with?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit more about social media, because I'm not sure that and I'm not sure how you use it for the business now that you're with, but I'm not sure that every business owner really knows what they're doing either, or like why they're doing this, how they're using it, and if they're using it effectively. Because so many different ways to use Facebook and use LinkedIn, and use all these types of stuff. So I was wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah. And every platform wants you to think it's the platform you have to be on. So I would say the first thing to keep in mind is you probably want to just really focus on one platform. If you get to the point that you have a process for posting consistently on that platform and it's going well, and then you decide to expand to another platform, go for it. But pick one and pick it based on where you think that ideal customer is hanging out. So, for example, the business that I'm working with right now, their primary platform is LinkedIn, because that's where that B2B audience is hanging out. So we are posting almost exclusively on LinkedIn, and then just taking some of the content from LinkedIn and recycling it on other platforms. But we're sort of LinkedIn first. And that's what I would recommend is, if people are hanging out, if your people are on Instagram, start with Instagram. If they are all TikTok viewers, start with TikTok, but just focus on getting one platform right. I think part of the issue with social media is people believe that they have to be everywhere. And so they spread themselves way too thin, and they don't end up doing any of it very well. It's sort of subpar.
Yeah. I've had people tell me, I posted on LinkedIn and it didn't do anything. I'm like, how many times did you post? Well, posted like one time last month.
Yeah.
3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you measure, at least in your business, how do you measure whether what you're doing is effective on social media,
The-
on, let's say, LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, there are different. So, a very superficial measurement is engagement, right? I have tried and I've never been able to deposit engagement in my business banking account. It's not, it
Right.
doesn't actually translate into funds, right?
As followers, right?
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't work, but it's a superficial way of saying, okay, this post topic got more engagement. So you can kind of say, well, on this platform and with the people I'm connected with on this platform, this post topic seems to do well. So that, I'm not saying to ignore engagement. It does matter, but it's definitely not the whole thing. What I'm always looking for is conversions. So people who reach out to the business and try to take the next step. That's what I'm mostly looking at. Is just overall, are conversions increasing to the business? One of the ways that you can measure that is by, this is a super geeky marketing thing, but you can measure using UTM links that attribute the click to a certain platform. So you can use a link that tells you this link came from LinkedIn, for example. And that can be very helpful just to sort of see, okay, are my efforts actually paying off on this platform?
Got it. So those links are like in the old days when we used to use specific 800 numbers per ad.
Exactly.
know.
That's exactly what they are. The other thing that
So
is,
they go through another site and they redirect to your
yes,
site? So
yes. So, but however, I say that, and at the same time, we should probably talk about this as well. So we are very quickly moving into a world where that kind of attribution is going to become very challenging. And it's because of all the privacy measures that are getting put into place now by all the tech companies. And, the European Union has really dialed in their privacy measures. And so a lot of the tech companies are having to respond to that by changing their products. And so in the marketing world, what we're hearing a lot about right now is we're entering a cookie-less world, which doesn't mean that there won't be cookies for Cookie Monster. It means that we will not be able to track where people are coming from as well as we could before because of the privacy measures.
Yeah, pop-ups. Do you accept our cookies? You go, yes, and then they follow you.
Exactly. Yeah. And browsers, people are setting up their browsers so they can't be tracked and all of that. So that's a reality. And the way we respond to that is to think more about kind of brand marketing and getting the word out, kind of like back in the old days where we would do things that were harder to track, but they helped to elevate our brand and help people to recognize our brand when they saw it out in the wild. So it's, I think social media is always going to be a mix of tracking, but also just trying to get engagement and trying to spread the word about your business.
So in the future, you think it's going to be harder for like a downtown or a retailer to know who came to your store, where they came from, because now with geo tagging, and I mean, they can tell like how many people came to this town during their street fair and what towns they came from. It's not completely
I think it's going to be harder, not impossible, but I just don't think we're going to have as much data about that. So we may be watching trends based on a much smaller slice of people versus what we can see right now. That seems to be where things are going.
right, which is the way it used to be. I mean,
It used to be that way, right? So, like, for example, that doesn't faze me at all. I know all about brand marketing. That kind of marketing, that measurable marketing, is typically called performance marketing, where you can get data on how your efforts are converting, and you have a lot of really good data. But we're getting less and less of that data, which means we need to rely more on brand marketing, which is a perfectly valid way to market. And we did it that way for decades. So, it's a perfectly valid way. You just may not have as much hard data about how it's performing, but obviously you're always looking at our sales up, our sales down, right? And that's a great gauge.
Yeah, exactly. You think Facebook's more of a B2C type of a platform still? I don't know how. I know it's changed.
I mean, yes, I think in a very general way, yes, it is a little bit more B2C. It's more about the individual than reaching out to business. You can reach people who are in businesses, decision makers in some cases. It's very dependent, like everything in marketing, it's very dependent on what you're offering and who you're offering it to. But in general, I would say it's probably more B2C.
Okay. And I guess I'll mix the two of these together, sales and marketing. Is that in your company, is it the same department? I mean, you guys are responsible for sales and marketing?
No,
Or is it
it's definitely
generally-
two different departments. So
Oh, it is? Okay.
the structure that we use at DCS is the marketing team is getting leads into the business. And then what we're trying to do is to get them to book a call with our sales team. And the sales team then has a super in-depth conversation to really understand the specific challenges that the prospect is experiencing so that they can then recommend solutions that will work for them. So it's a very tailored process and very personal once they engage with us. So the initial job that we have in marketing is just to let people know what we do, get them in the door
Right.
so that we can stay in communication. We've got a ton of content on our website, years and years of content, hundreds of pieces of blog posts. We have a YouTube channel. There's just a lot of really helpful content out there to attract people in and help them with their challenge of the moment, but to help them with a larger challenge of all the financials in their dental practice or their dental group. They need to talk to our sales team, who can then get really granular about how we can help them.
Now, are your salespeople basically closing people, or do they have to go and prospect, generate their own business also?
They're basically closing people for the most part. They do a little bit of prospecting as well, but they're basically, people schedule a call with them and they get on the call and find out what's going on with their practice and offer a solution.
Right. But the prospecting and lead generation is really on you guys for
Yep.
the most part.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. And then probably a lot of companies are like that. Okay, so I guess the best way, since we're talking about it, for people to interact and find you is LinkedIn, right? Do you have your own LinkedIn profile, or is it part of the company's
I do
profile?
have my own LinkedIn profile. They can find me on LinkedIn, Pamela Wilson. I also have my own website URL, so I own my name on the internet, PamelaWilson.com. And I'll be posting about the books on my website. So if people want to learn more about the updated versions of the books that are coming out with all the AI guidance, that's going to be on my website homepage.
Okay. Yeah, I tell a lot of people, I think that they miss out on the personal branding side of it. If you're, not everyone's an author, but if you're a small business owner, if you're an employee of a company, you don't want to do this, that's fine. But if you own a small business and you have, this is the company, there's nothing wrong with also doing this is the person. Like I do that. I have MitchBeinhacker.com and I have BeinhackerLaw.com.
Right.
Where the podcast, the speaking, the books are on the Mitch Beinhacker site. There's the law and the legal stuff I do, and they're kind of integrated. But people want to know who you are. And
It's great. And if you can I'll tell you what, Pamela Wilson was not that easy to get. The more common your name, the harder it is to get. But when I was able to nab it,
it's probably taken.
Yeah.
But Pamela Wilson is not an uncommon. I mean, it's Wilson's common, right? So I'm surprised.
Yes. I get emails for other Pamela Wilsons on a regular basis who are probably kind of annoyed with me because I have the URL, but what can you do?
Right. Well, you got it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, Pamela, I can't thank you enough coming on live with me. Is it earlier in Nashville? Is it like
it's a little earlier? Yes, it's 10:30 here. We're Central Time, so just inside the Central Time zone.
All right. Well, stick around a little bit. Let's close out the show. And I can't thank you enough for talking.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You are welcome. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.